Once again, we're looking at the quadratic formula to solve a quadratic equation. So when an equation has an x squared in it and it's equal to 0, but we're going to look at the special case today of what happens if not all three terms are there. So I will do the last one first. So remember the quadratic formula goes x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So in your equation, you need to identify the a, b, and c. The a is the number that's in front of the x squared, the b is the number that's with the x, and the c is the number that's alone. Keep in mind, if there isn't a number in front of x squared, you can just put a 1 there. So a is a 1, the b is a negative 10, and the c is a 6. And then we fill in our formula. So x equals negative, now we put in the b number, negative 10. When you have a negative 10, negative is actually a positive 10, plus or minus square root, the b squared, I put it in parentheses, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2a. Start with the part underneath the square root. So we're going to do negative 10 squared, which is 100, and minus 4 times 1 times 6, which is 24. So we have x equals 10 plus or minus the square root all over 2. And inside that square root, negative 10 squared is a positive 100 and minus 24. 100 minus 24 is 76. So again, I'll just rewrite everything, but we'll rewrite it as the square root of 76 all over 2. We keep rewriting it so that we don't make mistakes in our steps and that someone else can understand what we've done. Now we split it apart and we get two separate answers. We calculate once where we have 10 plus the square root of 76, then divided by 2, and once where we have 10 minus the square root of 76, then divided by 2. So 10 plus the square root of 76 is 18.7, and if we divide by 2, we get an answer of 9.36 with rounding. In our second, if we do 10 minus the square root of 76, we get 1.28, and if we divide by 2, we get 0.64. So these two answers are our answers for x. They're the answers that if we plugged either one of them back in as the x, a calculator output would give us a 0, and that 0 tells us the x-intercepts on the graph, or where the graph, as we solved it, where the graph crosses the x-axis at 9 and 0.64. Let's look at one where not all three terms are there. In problem B, we have the a for the number with the x squared, but we don't have any number that's with the x. So what I would do is rewrite it. I would say there are 4x squared plus there are 0 x terms, and then minus 121 is equal to 0. And so when we try to solve for x, now we can easier see the a, the b, and the c number. I write them down just to be careful. A is 4, b is 0, c is negative 121. And then we fill in our quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Okay, so we'll rewrite x equals negative 0. 0 can't be positive or negative, it's just 0. Plus or minus the square root all over 8. Then the part that's inside that square root, 0 squared is still 0. And then negative 4 times negative 21. So this minus and negative turn out to be a positive. So we're going to end up with 0 and a positive 1,936. And so 0 plus 1,936 is the same. X equals 0 plus or minus square root 1,936, all divided by 8. And now we get our two separate answers. 0 plus the square root of 100, 9,936, then divided by 8, and 0 minus the square root of 1936, then divided by 8. So the first one in a calculator, if I do 0 plus the square root of 1,936, I get 44, and then I divide by 8, which is 5.5. Our second one, if I do 0 minus the square root of 1,936, I get negative 44, then divide by 8, and I get negative 5.5. So these are our solutions for when we solve for x on any quadratic. They also represent the x-intercepts, or where the graph crosses the x-axis at positive 5.5 and negative 5.5. For your assignment, you have to do the first two problems and turn it in.